We are going to get started. We're going to run through a handful of things. This is Pints and Parables, an evening with Peter Rollins. If you're not here for Pints and Parables, you're in the wrong class, so make your way. So the way it works, if you have not figured it out already, when you got your ticket or checked in, you got 3 different color tickets. Each ticket corresponds with one of the flagship varieties of Persimmon Hollow Brewing Company, who is our co-sponsor, partner, et cetera, with Pints and Parables. We are in conversations with Persimmon Hollow about the possibility of even doing something as frequently as once a month at the tap room at Persimmon Hollow, which is a couple hundred yards away, just down Georgia Ave. We're going to take this whole party there when we get done here. But to continue, obviously we won't have Peter Rollins every month, which is a shame, but we would like to continue in the tap room this valuable practice of telling stories and considering not just what they mean, but what they do to us. So that's a bit of what we're going to do tonight. There are a couple other Peter Rollins events coming up in the next 48 hours. So tomorrow evening, by the way, my name's Ben. I helped with a group of friends to start this, which is Collective. It's a congregation and a bunch of other things connected with that. But every Sunday night at 5, we have a service here, which is also streamed online. Tomorrow night, in lieu of a sermon, I'm sort of giving up my platform so that I can interrogate Peter Rollins. And so we'll kind of grill him and get a bit of his background. He mentions sometimes in talks having been an evangelist in a former life, so I'm definitely going to ask about that. So it should be fun. That's entirely free, but as you can tell, the room is filled just from people who are willing to pay, so when it's free, it's going to be pretty crowded. So if you're planning on coming, maybe come a little early to grab a seat. That should be super fun. Our house band will be playing in addition to one of our musicians who's now moved on, called Mike the Prophet. He'll be playing tonight at Persimmon Hollow, so a lot of cool stuff going on. And there will be childcare tomorrow night. So if you have kids and you want to come to it and that's a question, we have childcare. We also have collective kids stuff for those 6 to 11 years old, so come and check that out. Connect and support. So if you have interest in getting more involved with Collective or even just figuring out kind of what it is, there's a Connect and Support table back there. It has that same logo on it, at which you can sign up for some of the events that are coming up. You can sign up for the Collective weekly email list. And if, like so many people who follow Pete Rollins, if you said goodbye to church long ago, but you've been stashing all those tithes and wondering what to do with them, you can also support Collective financially. It's so easy. I'm believing for thousands of dollars. So email us. Oh, so this is funny. This is actually really funny. Last night, so we did an event last night. You may have heard of the Last Supper. So this isn't some of the stuff Pete's written about and talked about. So we did the Last Supper. We had this, 20 people seated at this long table, and Pete's doing his thing. In the middle of his lecture, it starts to rain so loud that he almost had to stop. You can't hear him, even though he's amplified. He's coming through the speakers. What he didn't know is that we have to replace the roof of this building, so I'm kind of holding my breath, like, is it going to come crashing down in the middle of this thing? But it didn't. Anyway, so if you want to help to put a new roof on the building or just help us do what we do, you can give financially. Sunday Soul Brunch. This is something we've been dreaming about for a long time. This kicks off actually next weekend at Cafe Da Vinci, which we have a ton of history with them. So we will be doing once a month, every second Sunday, we will be doing a catered brunch at Cafe Da Vinci. We're going to start with this amazing band called the Lee Boys. Their style is called Sacred Steel. It's sort of electric gospel. Going to be really, really cool. And I'll give a very brief kind of talk to help us kind of get to thinking about life and soul and spirituality. So if you're interested in that, this very first one is entirely free. We just want to get the community out, get people coming to understand what it is. In the future, we will be charging for these. They'll probably be between $12 and $15, but next week is free. It is limited seating, though, so you have to have a ticket, and apparently there are already over 160 tickets reserved for it, so it's going to be a phenomenal event. So if you're interested, even if you're from, out of the area, we had people come in last night from Tampa and South Florida. If you want to come up, awesome, do it, but get a ticket, SundaySoulBrunch.com. Awesome. And this is pushing a little ways out, but you're in the room for talking about fun things and drinking alcohol. And we do that again in the middle of summer, an event called Wine to Water. We do a wine tasting, food pairing to raise money to drill clean water wells. I think we've drilled 18 over the last 4 years in Cambodia. It's one of the most water impoverished places on the planet. So this year we will actually be doing 2 seatings. We'll do a 5 p.m. and a 7:30 p.m. because we've sort of outgrown doing one. So There will be more details coming. Again, get on the email list. Stay tuned to our social media, and you can get more of that. After you've drunk your 3 beers, you've got your 3 tickets, you turn them in, you're thinking, you know what? I could have another. You can have another. They're $2 once you're past your 3 beers that come with a ticket. We also had a generous gift from a friend who brought beer from the Terrapin Brewing Company. So we've got one of the Terrapin beers back there. So once you get past your 3 tickets, or if you happen to like one and you don't want the other ticket and you just want to buy it, you can get it. They're $2. Peter's books will be for sale just after the event. He will sign them. I saw some of the things that were signed in books last night. Some are great, some are kind of creepy. So depending on what you want, he's willing to go there. The more you pay, the better it gets. And we also have some swag, some merch for collectives. We've got stickers and T-shirts and stuff like that, and we're happy to sell you some of that stuff. I think that should do it. We're kind of going to do 2 sets. So Pete's going to get up, lead us into thinking about parables. We'll see how that goes. The more you laugh and get into it, the better he is. The more you drink, the better he is. So I stole that. He does that every time. I stole it. And then we'll probably break for a little bit. Everybody can hit the restrooms, get another beer, and then we'll keep going. So ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, you came to hear him, Pete Rollins.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Hello. How's it going? Look at that. We're here again. We're all together. It's like I walk into a cafe down the road and people know me. I walk in and there's like 4 people who say hello to me. I'm like, this is incredible. In LA, the only person you meet who you know is a stalker. That's it. So I feel like home from home. And I was trying to think back to, we were talking about the first time I came out to the land, which is about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. It was whenever I think Ben reached out to me and said, I'm in a place called The Land. It's the main city in Florida. And I'd like you to speak at my mega church. And I was like, yeah, I'm there. No problems at all. Yeah. I feel sorry for Rob Bell because he's speaking somewhere called Miami tomorrow night. Sucker. Idiot. Yeah. So, since that first time, I've been coming back and really developed a relationship with Collective and with the people who are involved here. And then, as I say, with this Pints and Parables, it was going to be Parables and Pints, but Clark said definitely start with the Pints. Pints and the Parables. As Ben says, they get better with alcohol. But I thought that actually this is a really nice idea. If it works and it's a nice evening, this is something that might happen in the future, and I might do one in LA as well. So it's nice to be part of something that might actually grow and be part of the landscape of the land. So tonight is about parables. And if you know my work at all, you know that parables and storytelling is part of what I do. And I think some people think that it's because I'm Irish that I like storytelling. That's a complete lie. I'm actually from Alabama. This is just, I just put this on. This is the money right here. You should hear me when I'm not doing the accent. Right? But I didn't grow up telling stories. I am not the person in the bar entertaining everyone with some funny anecdote. I kind of learnt it over time. But when I first became interested in Christianity, which is when I was 17, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that tomorrow night, but when I first became interested in the type of truth that I saw in that tradition, parables struck me as the medium to communicate that truth. So very early on, very naive, no education, no nothing, just came in, but I saw parables and I thought, of course, this is the medium for communicating the type of truth that prophets and heretics and the mad and the crazy try to bring to the surface. It's the type of discourse that you're going to find in people like Diogenes and Socrates, in the mystics like Meister Eckhart or Marguerite Porete, or in the prophets like Jeremiah and Amos, or in contemporaries like Mother Teresa or Simone Weil or Mahatma Gandhi or whoever it is. But strangely, I didn't hear many parables or many stories. What I heard was the type of discourse that you might hear in a university. Let me simplify, but propositions, that faith was about thinking a certain way, nailing things down, whereas parables seem to be about blowing things up. And so I kind of put that to one side, and I was involved in church life for a while, but it niggled in the back of my mind that there was something about this very propositional type of communication that just wasn't getting to the heart of what I was originally responding to. And then I read something by Søren Kierkegaard. He was a man without equal in terms of intellect. And he was sitting one day wondering, what should be my vocation? And he looked around at all the other brilliant people at the time. And he noticed that people were making things easier. Railroads, communication, in books, things where everything was about making things simple. And he said, how can I contribute to that? What can I add to that? And then he said, it hit me, like a lightning bolt. My vocation will be to make things difficult. Right. So that's what got him writing. So and everybody's trying to simplify, and you want to go in and get a book that tells you, 5 steps to winning friends and influencing people, or how to make prayer work, or how to, whatever it is, these books that are simplifying. He's like, I'm going to make it more difficult. And Kierkegaard is one of those great thinkers who uses parables, and who is frustrating when you read him. He is confusing. He contradicts. He writes with numerous pseudonyms. So you don't really know when it's Kierkegaard you're reading or when it's a character, whether Kierkegaard even agrees with what the character is saying. There was one time he simultaneously released 2 books that both kind of contradicted each other. It's like crazy stuff, right? You're like, what's going on? And as you read it, you kind of get short-circuited, but then you glimpse something. And so tonight, as I tell parables, the theme of the night is also parables. And I guess the theme of the night is, what is the type of truth that they're trying to get at that can only be got at indirectly, not directly? There's a lot of things that can be got at directly, but when it comes to the truths that you find in something like theology and also in psychoanalysis, the truth is never direct. It's always ciphered. It's always complicated. The words are bending around something, and you just get little glimpses of something. Think of your dreams as an example. Your dreams are probably your deepest truths. In many ways, if you want to know your wishes and your fears, your anxieties, your hopes, they're loaded up in your dreams. Not in your everyday waking life. That's where we hide from our fears and our anxieties and our angers. But in our dreams, someone has a dream, for example, where they see their brother drowning, and they're behind a glass sheet. And they're hitting the glass sheet, and they're screaming as they watch their brother drowning. And then maybe they tell this dream to their analyst. He says, oh, it was terrible, it was awful, I felt terrible, I watched my brother drown. But of course, the analyst says, well, you know what, it is your dream, right? This didn't happen in reality, it's a dream. He said, well, yeah, but I didn't want this to happen. Well, you kind of maybe did. Why was there a glass sheet? I mean, it's your dream, So you made the lake, you put your brother in it, and you put a glass sheet up there so you couldn't save him. And then what you maybe did is, because that's so terrifying, the fact that you really hate your brother like that, there's a sensor in you that goes, oh, this is awful, this is terrible. But that's the kind of lie that maybe speaks the truth. So, you do this, and then maybe, if that's a good interpretation, the person says, yeah, well, actually, you know what, I really am angry with my brother. I'm holding all this resentment because of X, Y, and Z. And you basically have come to that realization through this strange, circuitous route. So one parable that I think kind of begins to get at the heart of this non-propositional discourse is an ancient Jewish parable. It's one of the first parables I ever heard. And you'll have maybe heard some of these parables I tell tonight if you've been following my work over the years. But this is one about a young guy who's 22 years old, and he comes to an old rabbi in this city, a very famous rabbi. And he knocks on the guy's door. The rabbi opens the door. He hasn't made an appointment or anything. He's just this arrogant guy who's like, I want to meet this famous rabbi. So the door opens and he says to the rabbi, I'm here to learn the wisdom of the Hebrew people. Teach me. And this old rabbi looks at him and says, what age are you? He says, I'm 22 years old. He says, go away. Go away. Come back in 10 years. You've got nothing to learn at the moment. Just go away. You young people, you've got all the answers, right? Which is the truth of if you've ever been at university. And when it's not that this Heidegger said this. It's not that the lecturers know everything and the students know nothing. No, the students know everything, and the lecturers don't know very much at all. And actually, what the lecturers are there to teach is that very thing. They're there to teach that you don't know. They're there to teach you that there's so much more to learn. That's why, if someone says, oh, you study philosophy, or, you're going to get imprisoned in theory. The philosophical answer is, well, actually, if you don't study it, you'll be imprisoned in theory. Because we're already in theory. We're immersed in it. We're embedded in it. Like fish going through water. We don't see the water, but the water is immersed in us. What we have to do is, in a sense, study theories. And in studying them, you begin to see how immersed in them you are. And you can kind of very gradually find a type of freedom from them. So he's seeing this young guy. He just says, listen, go away, come back in 10 years. But he says, no, I'm here. Test me. I can show you that I'm ready to learn. So the rabbi invites him in and says, okay, I'll ask you a question. We'll see if you're ready. Question is this. He looks over at this fireplace. He says, two guys come down a chimney, and at the bottom one has soot on their face and one doesn't. And tell me, who washes their face? And the young guy says, oh, well, the person with the soot on their face. And the rabbi says, no. He says, the person without the soot on their face. Why? Well, because when they get down to the bottom of the chimney, they see the person with the soot on the face, so they think, I must have soot on my face, and so they wash their face, right? Go away. And the young guy goes, okay, no, test me again. That was clever. Test me again. He says, I know Aristotelian logic, I know symbolic logic, I'm ready for this. So the rabbi says, okay, I'll ask you a different question. He says, two men come down a chimney, and at the bottom, one has soot in their face, one doesn't. Who washes their face? Right? The young guy goes, well, the person without the soot in their face, because they see the person with the soot in their face and they think, and the rabbi stops them, says, stop trying to be so clever. Of course not. The guy with the soot in his face, he tastes it in his mouth, he feels it in his eyes. Stop trying to be smart and clear off. And the guy's like, no, come on, trust me again. He says, one more question. Two people come down a chimney, one has soot in their face, one doesn't. Who washes their face? The young guy says, well, was it my first response for a different reason? The rabbi says, no. They both wash their face. How can you not come down a chimney and not think, you've got soot on your face, go away, right? So when you hear this ancient parable, you go, what is it saying? What's going on? And I think part of it is it's saying that this young guy thinks that the answer is an answer. He thinks that entering into this faith tradition is about having some sort of meaning, some sort of thing you can hold on to, some sort of answer. Whereas for the rabbi, he's saying, no, that's the very thing you have to give up. This is about arguing and fighting and wrestling with the tradition. When you enter this, you're going to have to ask questions. You're part of a massive conversation that has been going on long before you were ever born and will be going on long after you've died. That's what you're being invited into, which is kind of like the exact opposite of what I was looking for at various times in my life. I thought religion was about having the answer, not being drawn into a conversation, an argument, a discussion, something that is ongoing. And so there's a parable actually that kind of gets at the heart of trying to shake us out of this. This is an old Buddhist parable. And it's one where this great sage meditates every night in an old temple. So every night he's there meditating in a temple with his disciples, and this cat kind of goes through the temple and is always kind of like, causing a distraction. So the old sage ties the cat to the tree during meditation. Eventually, the old sage dies, and the disciples continue to tie the cat to the tree during meditation. Well, eventually, of course, the cat dies. And so the disciples go down into the marketplace and they purchase a new cat. They bring it to the temple and they tie it to a tree during meditations. Well, after 7 generations of cats, eventually the tree falls down and they replant a tree to tie the 7th generation of cat to. And finally, the learned scholars come out and they start to write learned treatises about the theological and spiritual significance of tying cats to trees during meditation, right? This is, I think, a beautiful ancient parable, again, that just plays with and confuses the idea that actually the faith has ever been about getting the answer, nailing things down, domesticating things. That somehow this is missing the point of entering into a deep and ongoing discussion. It's a very Jewish kind of notion. There's a parable that I wrote in a book called The Orthodox Heretic, which I don't have. It's the one book I could probably sell tonight because it's a book of parables. But I'm really bad at marketing, so I completely didn't bring it. It's really annoying. But it's a story about this young girl. She's 14 years old. She has a vision. And in this vision, an angel appears to her. And this angel says, God has looked down upon you and has given you a mission, a vocation. You are to translate the word of God into the common tongue and distribute it among the people. Now, at the time, the Bible was in Latin and in the churches, and the only people who could read it were the priests. And this young girl was poor. The idea of getting the translators, of getting a printing press, of getting everything in motion that would be able to get this Latin text into the common tongue was a huge task. But she dedicated her life to it. She sold the few things she had. She started to work in odd jobs, saving money, begging on the streets, using her cunning to convince people to support her. And as she slowly, over 5 to 10 years, began to gather up the money, she was getting close to her goal when this famine hit the land. People began to starve. And so this young girl, Sophia, took the money that she'd raised and she used it to bring food in from another country. She used it for medical supplies, and she dedicated herself to those people who had nothing. And when eventually crops began to grow again, she put herself back to her original vocation, began to raise money from scratch. 10 more years pass. She's getting closer to her goal, maybe 2 to 3 years out. And plague descends, sickness, thousands dying all around her. Again, she leaves her vision. She looks after the people in front of her. She pays for medical care. She uses the money for hospitals. She drains most of it. And eventually, when the country begins to strengthen, once more she turns to her original vocation. She raises the money. And near the end of her life, she's able to hire the translators, she's able to get the printing press, and she's able to see the first copies of the Bible produced. And when she died, it was said that actually she had translated and interpreted the Word of God not once, but 3 times in her life. And the first two were the most beautiful of all. In that story, it captures something very essential about what parables do. Parables very often take the tradition and respect it, and then innovate within it. A parable happens within a tradition. It uses the language that people can understand. So in that parable, you have Sophia, you have the Bible, you have the Word of God, and it respects it. Because at the end, you have her translating the word 3 times. It says, yes, this is a book that's important. But then the innovation comes, and it says, but in her service to her neighbor, to the other, in her radical commitment to those who have nothing, to those who are oppressed. She is actually incarnating this word. You see this often in the Bible, like when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? He respects the views of the people at the time. And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, which basically everybody he's talking to would believe. So he respects that. And then he adds an innovation. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. In other words, if you want to know what that looks like, it looks like that. If you saw these two walking down the street, they'd be identical. You wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Is that love of God? Is that love of neighbor? Because they're the same. That's actually very, very radical. Because if that's true, that means if you love your neighbor, you're loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's a radical move, and yet it strangely respects the tradition. Within parables, and the parables that I've just told, there is this breaking apart of what we think. Parables are very hard to pin down. They're very hard to work out what exactly they're saying. New interpretations arise. They seem more interested in confusing you and getting you to think differently. Even the most well-worn of parables, you can find interpretations still today that are new and innovative. They can never be nailed down. And the truth is, if we want to admit it to ourselves, we're all a little bit like a philosopher who decides what they believe through rolling 3 dice. Roll 3 dice. What do I believe about ethics? Roll 3 dice. What do I believe about God? Roll 3 dice. What do I believe about business? 3 dice. About economics? About love? And then once the philosopher has worked out what they believe through these random rolls of the dice, she then goes out and argues those positions, writes books, engages in debates, addresses whole audiences, fighting passionately for those beliefs that were contingently given to her by the roll of 3 dice. Because in a sense, by the time we come to think about what we believe, we are already in a context that we didn't choose, thrown randomly into a family and into a world and into a language that we didn't choose. And it's not that you get to the point where you suddenly at the age of 7 or 10 or 15 or whatever age it is when you start to think critically. It's not that at that point you start with this empty basket and then you start filling it. You start putting in the ideas that you believe. By the time you get to that point, you're already full of beliefs that really are there before you've critically engaged with them. And either we can defend those to the death, or we can critically engage them. We can go, yeah, this is where I am, and these are the beliefs I have, and some of them are good, and some of them might not be good, and it's a whole mishmash. And I'm actually going to be open to critiquing them, thinking about them, reflecting on them. Because me, as a 20th century guy from Ireland, will have a very different understanding of love, of religion, of meaning than a 3rd century German peasant, than a 4th century Spanish soldier. And that's what parables seem to do. They seem to always crack things open, break things open, but with the message that that is actually the kind of truth. That's how we keep things moving. That's how we keep growing. That's how we become healthier human beings, listening to the other, letting them critique us. The subject matter that we talked about yesterday for those who were there. So there's another Jewish parable that captures this, and it reminds me actually of my own experience of writing parables, because when you write a parable, you think you know what it means. You think you know what it says, and then someone comes in and they read it and they see something that you never intended. I had a 14-year-old read a parable that I wrote, and he got this incredible meaning out of it that I never saw. I was like, oh yeah, that's very good, that's what I meant, you know. This is called death of the author, is that parables are they speak beyond even the people who write them. A good parable can't be contained. And so in the Jewish tradition, there's that famous parable where two rabbis are arguing over a passage in the Torah. And they've been arguing and arguing for days, into weeks, into months, and into years. And they can never agree on what this interpretation is about, how to correctly understand this passage in the Torah. So finally, God, who has the patience of a saint, but getting increasingly frustrated by this conversation, says, I'm going to go down and I'm going to tell them what it means. So God comes down, parts the clouds, goes to this park where they're sitting arguing. He says, I have listened to you guys argue for years. I will tell you what this means. And in a rare moment of unity, the two rabbis turn to God and say, what right have you to come down here and tell us what it means? You clear off and let us argue about it, right? Now, what's going on? Because the idea is, if anybody comes to you and says, this is what the text means, this is what the parable means, this is what the truth is, even if it's the author, if it's God, they've got it wrong. You know, why? Because you can't reduce it to a single meaning. It's like looking at a painting and thinking that you can reduce the painting to a singular meaning. It's not that the painting lacks meaning. The painting has such a superfluous amount of meaning. It's got so much going on. That's why you have to go back to your favorite paintings again and again and again. You don't just look at it once and say, I've got it. You have to go back, and you'll get new things out of it when you bring new things to it. Like a great book. You read a book that's a classic. And the second time you read it, it feels like a different book, speaking to you in different ways. When someone comes to you and says, this is the meaning of the text, if someone comes and says, this is what democracy is, this is what justice is, this is what love is, they don't have it. If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. Which is a way of saying, if you see democracy on the road, kill it. Because anything that you see is not democracy. It might be a shadow of democracy, a promise of democracy, a type of democracy. But it's not, but democracy is a promise of something to come. It's a promise that is never quite actualized, but that can inspire us to maybe work harder and better. So there's something about parables that always defy simple and easy interpretation. They will speak to us in new ways. And they will bring to the surface unpleasant truths. They will challenge us. One of the most famous parables is an ancient Islamic one that I was told for the first time yesterday, but it's about this merchant. And this merchant has this worker, and he sends the worker into the marketplace in Baghdad to go and get some supplies. And when the worker is down in the markets, he's going through this kind of crowd of people, and he pushes against someone in black cloak right down to the ground. And the person in the black cloak turns around and he realizes it's death. And death points at him in a menacing way. And the worker is terrified, goes white as a sheet. He runs back to the merchant. And he tells him what happened. He says, I was down in the markets in Baghdad. I was getting some supplies as you asked, and I bumped into death. And death looked at me in a menacing way. I'm terrified. What will I do? And the merchant said, take my fastest horse. If you ride as fast as you can, if you don't stop, if you gallop all the way, you'll get to the city of Samarra by midnight tonight. So immediately the worker gets on the horse and takes off. And so the merchant goes down into the marketplace and he sees death. And he goes up to death and he says, what are you doing scaring my worker? And death looks at him and says, I wasn't scaring him. He says, I was just shocked. He says, he's down here buying goods in Baghdad, having fun. He says, I'm thinking he's got to get his skates on. He says, I've got a meeting with him at midnight in Samara. Right? So, it's brilliant. It's very funny, and then you realize what it means, and then it's terrifying. Like, oh yeah, that's really good. Oh, that means I'm going to die. And there's nothing I can do about it. The appointment is set. Right? Parables draw out and bring to the surface these unpleasant truths, these things that we would rather not look at. So for a contemporary example of that, there's an Irish story that I like. It's about this guy, and his guy's called Seamus. If you know me, Seamus makes a lot of appearances in my parables. Someday I want to write a book of the wisdom of Seamus, if I ever get around to it. So Seamus, he would go to this bar every week, and he would always order 4 pints of Guinness, just religiously, every week. And the barman never asked, just always poured the 4 pints of Guinness. Seamus drank them all, would walk away. But this one week, Seamus comes in, and he orders 3 pints of Guinness. And so the barman takes the opportunities as pouring the Guinness. He says, listen, Seamus, you know, you've been here for a long time, and every week you order 4 pints of Guinness. And this week you've ordered 3. You know, what's going on? And he says, well, he says, you know, I have 2 brothers, and my father, and myself. And we're all very close. And they're all in different parts of the world. And so every week, I have a drink, one for me, one for my father, one for my 2 brothers. Oh, that's very nice. But he says, sadly, my father passed away recently. So he says, you know, it's my 2 brothers and myself left, so we have 3 pints of beer. Oh, very good, very good. So this continues on for a while. And eventually, Seamus comes in and he orders 2 pints of Guinness. And the barman says, I don't mean to pry, Seamus, but did something happen to one of your brothers? And Seamus goes, oh, no. He says, no. He says, doctor's orders, I've had to stop drinking. No. I really like this story because I think it kind of actually tells us something about ourselves. There's a really interesting phenomenon today where we can engage fully in a system that we don't think we're engaging fully in. You know, and this happens in a number of ways, but you know, take the example of reality TV. In reality TV, the way it functions is this. If there's Keeping Up with the Kardashians, I think, because that's one of the big ones, isn't it? People watch it. Now, there's 2 types of viewer. There's the naive viewer who's watching it and going, oh, I wish I was like them. I wish I had their money. I wish I had this or that, right? But then there is the enlightened viewer, the ironic viewer, who watches it laughing that there's a naive viewer who wants to be like them, right? And so you've got these 2 types of viewer. Now, technically, there may actually not be any naive viewers. It's very possible that some reality TV shows are purely watched ironically by enlightened kind of hipster types who are laughing at this fantasy of the naive other who watches it for real, or who thinks that the people who are in the reality TV show are naively engaged in what they're doing, when maybe they all know it's just a game as well. And so we're all participating in a type of game. And by the way, how does a viewer show up in ratings if they're enlightened and ironic? They show up in exactly the same way as someone who is naive and watching it in a non-ironic way. And so our material commitment to the TV show, whether we're watching it, as I say, in an ironic way or not, is still feeding it. We are immersed in the system, and even though we're not actually intellectually immersed in it, we're fully in it. And of course, in relation to things like structural racism, you know, we may not be racist in our kind of subjective experience, but like in Northern Ireland, sectarianism is still rife. Sectarianism, I might not be sectarian, but it still dictates where I'm going to buy a house, or where I want to send my kids to school, or what kind of job I'm going to go to, what kind of bar I'm going to drink in. And strangely, it's there. It's not in my conscious level, but it's impacting the way I live my life. I'm immersed in it, while somehow intellectually feel I'm not immersed in it. And so there's that story about this person who goes to a high-priced New York lawyer and says, how much is it for your advice? And the woman says, oh, it's $1,000 for 3 questions. The guy goes, seriously? And she says, yes. What's your third question? Right? You think you're on the outside questioning it, but you realize you're actually in it already. You're part of it. You're already having to pay the money. This is why there's a great story from Northern Ireland about the British Army. Whenever it was the Troubles, the British Army would come over and they'd be sent to all these different towns all over the country. And most of the places they were sent were tiny villages with nothing to do, pub on every corner but nothing else, right? So this group of soldiers are sent to a place called 5 Mile Town. 5 Mile Town, nothing to do. They're sitting there bored one night and the sergeant says, lads, let me show you a little trick you can play with the Irish. Show you how dumb they are, right? Let's all go down to the pub. So all go down to the pub, sit down, they all order their drinks. And the sergeant looks around for the drunkest guy in the room. He's looking around, they're all looking pretty wasted. It's Ireland, it's a bar. But he sees this one guy holding up the bar in the corner. And he recognizes him. He's like, you're called Seamus, aren't you? He says, yes. Okay, I know you. Seamus, come here. So Seamus staggers over. And the sergeant, he takes out a crumpled old dirty £5 note, puts it on the table, and he takes out a coin, shiny £1 coin, shines it up a little bit more, puts it on the table. And then he says, okay, Seamus, would you rather have this dirty, crumpled old, ripped up note, or would you like this bright, shiny coin? And Seamus sees the shiny coin, and it glints in from, the light, and he bites it in his one good tooth. Oh. He says, Mister, I said, I'd love this shiny coin, right? The magic coin. And they go, yeah, take it, and laugh, it's idiots. And they play this with a couple of others, and they're doing this. And there's an American in the room, and she's aghast. She's like, what's going on? So when the soldiers leave, she goes up to the guys at the bar and says, what are you doing? Do you not know the £5 note's worth 5 times more than the pound coin? And Seamus says, of course we do, love. But if we took the £5 note, they'd stop playing the game. Yeah. Yeah. We're not as dumb as we look, right? But this is the perfect example of a game that everyone's playing in, even though nobody believes in it, right? The soldiers don't believe in the game, the Irish don't believe in the game, but the game continues to run because we all materially participate in it, right? This is kind of, I think, in our age, the challenge that we have, participating in systems that we think we're not participating in because maybe intellectually we're not, but somehow still playing the game. I could go a few directions with that. Well, one thing very quickly, this takes me off parables for a second, but churches are kind of like this, and I've talked about this before, but where the people on the stage don't necessarily really believe any of it. The minister has the doubts, the band have the doubts. And I'm not talking about the traditionalists, they don't believe any of it. I'm talking about evangelicals, right? These mega churches, the secret is, I know, they hire the bands and stuff, right? But they come in and they play the game like they believe. And then the congregation, lots of those people have doubts and questions, but they all, hands up, for Jesus, all for Jesus. When it's not all for Jesus, it's also like, I want a cappuccino from Starbucks, I don't know. But we play this game, and because we all participate in it, even though none of us necessarily believe in it, it still continues to function. And so the challenge, this is the challenge for protest groups, if we get into it, is to expose that. Because in every system, there is what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. So every ideology has what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. But it has a third thing. And what's that? Every ideology has the acceptably unacceptable. And this is always the key for change, the acceptably unacceptable. Take, we call it public school, but I think it'd be private school in America. These very upper class, rich schools in the UK. What's the acceptable in those types of school? Well, to be sober, to be upright, to do the right thing, to care for your society, to not look down on other people, right? What's the unacceptable? Drunkenness, sexism, all of that, like just going out and not caring, breaking things, not taking responsibility for your actions. But what's the acceptable, unacceptable? Well, you've got secret societies where you can do all of that. You can get drunk, you can look down on people, you can do all of these crazy things. And what's interesting is the system doesn't just have the acceptably unacceptable. If you want to get anywhere, you have to engage in the acceptably unacceptable. If you want to meet the next CEOs of the bank, if you want to be the next prime minister or know the next prime minister, you want to be in the secret society. If you're not in the secret society, you're going to be frowned upon. So you have the acceptable and the unacceptable and the acceptably unacceptable. In some churches, the acceptable is belief, not having doubts, not questioning. The unacceptable is doubting, questioning, not believing in God or resurrection or whatever. What's the acceptable, unacceptable? Well, you can do all of that, just don't talk about it, right? Behind closed doors, and quietly, we can talk, we can have a laugh over a pint and say all the questions we have. Just don't ever bring it to the surface. And in fact, if you're the naive believer who actually believes it all, you're not going to get very far in the church. Why? Because you're the last person anybody wants in the meeting, because you're going to be the one who's going to want to pray all the time. And you're going to be a nightmare. You're going to be wanting to go out in the streets and the evangelism, whatever it is. It's horrible, right? To keep them at a distance, you kind of pat them on the head, but they're always the ones you keep at bay. You see this Zizek philosopher here I like, but he talks about it in terms of in America in the 1950s in small town, you had like on the surface what's acceptable is the law, be law-abiding, be kind, be all of these things, and the unacceptable is violence and hatred and all of these. But then there was the acceptably unacceptable, and it was these secret societies of racist societies, Ku Klux Klan. And what was the crazy thing? The people who were the respectable ones at night were either part of that or endorsed it. So to be acceptable was to embrace the acceptably unacceptable. And what protesters do is they kind of bring to the surface the acceptably unacceptable. They bring to the surface these antagonisms and create change and transformation. Where do I want to go from here? I'll do one more and then we'll just take a break for 10 minutes. This is a parable I wrote. I've written a fairy tales, a book of fairy tales called, what is it called? Oh, Enduring Love. What is it called? I don't remember. I changed my mind. Enduring Love. I like the term enduring love because it actually means to endure love. Like how do you endure the horror of love? It's terrifying. It's terrible, That's partly why you get married to someone, because you get married to someone because you go, the love is too much, So you get married and then you can kind of like think about other things and they're there and it's all a bit more, intense love is just so much. It's crazy. So enduring love, and it's all set in a place called the Lonely Forest. And I don't even know if I'll ever publish it or not, but one of the stories is about this little field mouse. Now the field mouse is down on his luck. Jobs are hard to come by. There was the recession. He lost his work. He was in housing. He was flipping houses. That all just went to pieces. He had to get out of Dodge pretty quick, right? So he heard there were jobs in the Lonely Forest. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go there. So he goes there. He applies for a job in this factory that's putting nuts in acorns, and he gets the job. It's a pretty lowly job. It's just on a conveyor belt or whatever, but times are hard. He's got to do what he's got to do. So he takes the job. He moves his nest. I don't know if they've got nests. I don't know what the field mice have. Probably should have done some research. I have to be honest, the first time I wrote the book, one of my friends read it. She was like, these creatures don't live in the same forest. These are forest animals. These are like in rainforests. These are like desert animals. This animal would eat this animal. Like this just doesn't work. Like I should have just done like a 5-minute Google search and it would have helped. I'm slowly trying to get the animals to be at least in the same kind of universe. So anyway, this mouse gets the job. Everything going great. But then one day he's out scurrying and he falls in love. And he falls in love with this squirrel. Now, interspecies relationships is still a bit of a dodgy thing, but, love is love. They fall in love. And, everything's going great, but this little field mouse is very insecure. Very insecure. And if you're insecure yourself or jealous or whatever, you know that you can ask someone, do you love me, 100 times, and that helps. But the jealousy and the anxiety comes back. And sure enough, every day he would ask this squirrel, do you love me? And she would always say the same thing. Of course I love you. I loved you the day I met you. I love you this very day. I will love you till the day that I die. Every day, almost every day anyway, he'd ask this question. Anyway, one day he's sitting at the conveyor belt, putting the nuts in the acorn, and his supervisor comes over, this kind of slimy frog, and the frog says, "Listen, you're looking pretty down. Let's grab a cigarette, have a chat, right?" So they go out the back, they get some cigarettes, they're smoking, and the slimy frog says, "What's going on?" Anyway, the field mouse says, "Listen, I'm just a very anxious individual. I've been seeing a therapist about it. It's just not working. I just don't know. It's maybe the wrong type of therapy. I'm not sure." Right? But he said, "Why are you so insecure?" He says, "Well, I've fallen in love, and I'm just worried that the squirrel who I love doesn't love me back." And he says, "Well, have you asked her?" He says, "I ask her all the time." What does she say? She says, "Of course I love you. I loved you the day I met you. I love you this very day. I'll love you till the day that I die." And the slimy frog goes, "There you go." She says, "Yeah, but does she really mean that? What's she really thinking? What's she really thinking?" So the slimy frog says, "Listen, in the center of the lonely forest, there's a lake. And they call it the Lake of Truth. Supposedly, if you drink from it, you can hear the thoughts of all the other animals in the area. Why don't you take tomorrow off? Scurry down into the center of the forest with your squirrel, take a drink, and ask her the question." Well, he thinks this is a great idea, so he does. He invites her out for a walk. They go to the center of the lonely forest, and there's a lake. And he says, "Oh, I'm very hot. I'm very parched." He says, "I'm just going to scurry down and take a drink." So he scurries down, he laps up some water, he comes back to the squirrel, and he says, "Do you love me? I know I ask all the time, just one more time. I promise I'll never ask again. Do you love me?" The squirrel says, "Of course I love you. I loved you the day I met you. I love you this very day. I'll love you till the day that I die." And then he waits. And sure enough, he hears her inner thoughts. "Of course I love you. I loved you the day I met you. I love you this very day. I'll love you till the day that I die." He's elated. Feels fantastic. They scurry off, have a great day together. But a few weeks go by, and then he starts skipping work. And the slimy frog notices, and it's sickness, whatever, it's depression. And eventually he comes in, and the slimy frog again says, "Let's go out, have a cigarette. Something going on." They get out the back, and he says, "What's happening?" And he says, "Well, I'm devastated. She broke up with me." So, "What? She broke up with you?" "Yeah, it turns out she was having this affair with another field mouse, one with a shinier nose and softer fur than me." And so the frog said, "But you brought her to the Lake of Truth, didn't you?" "Yes, I brought her to the Lake of Truth, and what did it say?" "Well, I heard her thoughts, said she loved me." And he said, "Well, was it a broken lake? Was it cursed? Was it a lying lake?" The little field mouse said, "No, she didn't love me. She only thought that she did." Okay, take a break, have a drink, and we'll come back for some more in a minute. Cheers.
Putting them by all the other recyclables and hopefully we'll take it. Yep, I love it.
Are you watching the live stream?
All right, let's find our seats again. I want to... All right, we're going to let Pete get the laughs. Thank you. That's the greatest compliment you've ever given me. I look like my dad. Would have been better if you said I am like my dad. So I wanted to sort of touch on something that I feel like Pete said very well in a podcast I listened to recently, which is, it's interesting why people would come together in a room like this, especially in the age of the internet, where all of his stuff is free online. You can buy the books. And there are people, even for last night, we have people from Tampa, from South Florida, Jacksonville, Orlando, all over the place. Why would people come to DeLand? And he did a great job of saying it's not necessarily the content, which I'm sure it is, especially this is amazing. I don't know why we didn't think of this sooner, but the parables are really working. But he did a good job of saying it's us getting together in the room and recognizing that we're not alone. And especially people who have different pasts in terms of religion and faith and spirituality. Being able to come together and know you're not alone. And there are like 50 people tuned in online as well, which is amazing. But I want to encourage you guys, as great as the event is, to connect with each other. And if there's a way that you can be and would like to be involved with Collective, just to continue to have the sense that you're not alone. There are ways you can do that online. You can connect with Pete's work online. I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that, and I think Pete did a great job of saying this, that part of the value of parables is coming back, especially the ones that you're so sure that you already know. And so we've done this thing for the last 3 summers where Collective over the summer, we do a series where we incorporate coloring sheets, and we have the artists within our congregation do the coloring sheets, and all the adults color. The kids actually don't color, but during the service, the adults are coloring. So this summer, we're going to do parables and actually revisit sort of the most famous parables of Jesus, and hopefully sort of try and twist those a little and look at them a little bit differently. Last thing, I want to draw attention just for a second to Jess, who is the one that makes things happen around here. None of us be here if she hadn't made these events happen, so incredibly grateful for her. And then Clarence, who's making it possible for all of you online to be here, running the sound in the house and all that stuff. So like to appreciate our people. So one more time, Pete Rollins.
I can't believe my stuff's free online. I'm going to have to talk to someone about that. It's terrible. Yeah. I thought you said this was pay as you watch kind of thing, no? Yeah. So the last story I told there was, I actually got the inspiration to write it when I was watching the movie What Women Want with Mel Gibson. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but basically, Freud, famously near the end of his life, he said, one of the questions that still intrigued him or didn't have an answer to was, what do women want? So there's this movie, What Women Want, where Mel Gibson I think he's in the bath or something, he gets an electric shock, and he discovers that he has the ability to hear people's thoughts. He can hear women's thoughts in particular. So now he knows what women want. And I kind of, talks to them, uses this to his advantage or whatever. But the interesting thing from a psychoanalytic perspective is actually he doesn't know what women want, because our thoughts do not belie what we want. We can lie to ourselves. If I can hear your thoughts as a man or a woman, I'm no closer to knowing what you want, because often you're deceiving yourself. To know what someone wants is not to enter into their thoughts. And that's why, it takes a lot of work to find out what you want. My friend, my housemate, the other day asked me to meet him at a coffee shop. And he gave me the name of the coffee shop, the place to meet. And I ended up going to another coffee shop with the same name that was 45 minutes away, right? So there's a coffee shop that's 10 minutes down the road. I go to the coffee shop that's 45 minutes down the road. I order my food. And as soon as I order my food, I'm like, I think I've messed up. I think I'm at the wrong coffee shop. Right? This is weird. Now, at this point, I text my friend and say, totally went to the wrong coffee shop. I'm really sorry. And then I had this thought, and he simultaneously had the thought as well, because he texted me this. But I was like, maybe I didn't want to meet him, right? Because, like, if I was forgetful about lots of things like that, maybe, or if I had some problem, but actually I'm not usually. So, but I did this time. Did I do that because maybe, there's something we need to talk about? There's some issue that we need to work through. And he texted me, also jokingly, but kind of saying, do you really not want to see me? And I had to go, oh my goodness, like maybe there's a truth to that there's something that we need to talk about, that me and him have to clear the air. But I'm not able to admit that to myself, so it's not even in my thoughts, but it's in my material actions. It's in my subjectivity, in my being. And so in many ways, what I wanted to try and explore in that story is the way in which we shouldn't think that if I can hear my own thoughts or your thoughts, I know what I want or what you want. It's much more complicated than that. That if every time you're going to your mum's house, you can't find your car keys. It's like not just once, but every time can't find the car keys. Maybe you don't want to go and see your mum, right? But you can't even admit that thought to yourself, because the sensors are there, that's not a good thing, but actually your body is telling you it. Or, Freud uses lots of examples. One of the examples he uses is if you take out your office key to open your house, might that be telling you something that you don't want to go home? Your home is like your office. Might that be telling you something that you don't know? What's very interesting is how do we become detectives in our own lives? What does a detective do? Well, detective comes into a scene and there's a crime and all of the evidence is there. The police see the crime, what's happened. But if you like Columbo, like I love Columbo, I'm obsessed with Columbo. The Europeans are obsessed with Columbo. Columbo's on like basically every night of the week on some channel. I have seen every Columbo multiple times, multiple times. I've been conned by trying to buy the entire box set off eBay twice, before it was easy to get. Just love it. But, Columbo comes in and the crime scene is telling a story, and all the police see the story that the crime scene's telling. What does Columbo do? Well, he notices the one anomaly, the one little thing that nobody else has noticed that tells the truth. That cigarette. That cigarette there. So this guy's a smoker. Looks like he's been smoking all night, fell asleep, cigarette fell onto the ground, set a fire, place burned down. Open and shut case. He is a compulsive smoker. There are cigarettes all over the house. He works late. Maybe he had a heart attack, whatever, right? Open and shut case. But Columbo just picks up one of the cigarettes and he's like, oh, it's interesting because this has been stubbed out. All the other cigarettes in the house have been left to die naturally. So this guy smokes a cigarette and then just leaves it in the ashtray. But this cigarette's been stubbed. And what's interesting is when you smoke a cigarette, there's a little bit of nicotine on the end of the filter, but there's no nicotine at the end of this filter. It almost looks as if someone who's not a smoker has come in and lit a cigarette, made it look as if they've smoked a cigarette, stubbed it out, and then kind of like set fire to the place. It's the little anomaly. In psychoanalysis, it's the same idea, is that your truth is not in what's manifest. Your truth is in what's called the symptom, the anomaly in your life, the little thing that doesn't make sense, the numbness, the back pain, the weeping over an advert, the explosion of rage, the little thing that you don't pay any attention to, that's not me. That's potentially the site of truth, not in your thoughts, but in your body. And there's a parable, I think, that captures this. It's a story about Jesus. I think it's in Matthew or John. It's about he's out playing golf, and Jesus is he's a big fan of golf, like really, really big fan, but he's no good at it, right? Terrible. So he's got all the gear, all the clubs, everything, and he's teeing up the first hole in this beautiful golf course in Ireland, right? Teeing up. And he's about to swing, and there's Judas saying, that's completely wrong, you're just terrible, right? That's back off, I'm Jesus, back off. He's and Peter's there going, that's the wrong club. It's like it's not even, you should be using a wood, not an iron. Like, come on, guys, you're really crowding me out here, back off. And so Jesus tees it up, goes back, hits the ball, completely slices it, right? Goes into the water, and he's like, Jesus, and he's like, oh, it's terrible. So he goes out onto the water. He doesn't have many of the golf balls, so he goes out into the water. He walks on the water. He picks it up. He goes back a little bit sheepishly, a bit embarrassed, puts it up again, hits it again, slices a second time, goes back in the water. He goes back out, walks on the water, picks up the ball, and he's walking back. This Irish guy, Seamus, is walking past, right? He looks at this guy and he says to the disciples, who does that guy think he is? Jesus Christ. And one of the disciples says, no, he says, that is Jesus Christ. He thinks he's Rory McIlroy, right? Right. So, the idea, of course, being, even Jesus has an alter ego that he's kind of living up to. We create these ideas of ourselves, and we think that's who we are. We kind of live up to these ideals. And sometimes that's like somebody, like my mum loves John Wayne, obsessed with John Wayne. There's a massive picture of John Wayne in her toilet, like huge. It's very off-putting, So you're standing there, That means that's terrible. I can only go to the toilet when someone's watching now. It's John Wayne. I got to get therapy for that. You've got like some ideal, and sometimes the ideal is us. There's that thing they say. I wish someone loved me the way Kanye West loves Kanye West, right? So sometimes our ideal is an idealized form of ourself. That we have this idealized form, this mirror image, the narcissistic image of ourselves. We dress up, we go out on a Saturday night, we have this perfected image of who we are, but then if someone relates to us, we don't feel they're relating to us. They're relating to someone else, because this is kind of like a perfected image of ourselves. Who we are is not who we are. And that's why Oprah Winfrey once said, sometimes I have to take the advice of Oprah Winfrey. Right? She understands that she's not Oprah Winfrey. Right? She's not the superstar who's got everything and like whatever. She's still someone who's growing old just like everybody else and has questions just like everyone else. And the Oprah Winfrey that you see on TV is not necessarily the Oprah that you sit down and have a coffee with, who's like nervous or scared or anxious about something. Right? We don't see that side, but that side is there. So in a sense, it's difficult for us to come to know who we are, come to know our thoughts and our desires and our fears. It's difficult. But if we don't come to know them, we repress them, and they come out in all manner of ways. And that's the symptom. They come out in explosions. When you cannot speak your unpleasant truth finds ways to speak. So you create these senses of who you are, and you try and live up to that. But somewhere in your body, the truth speaks. Somewhere in your body, the truth communicates. And we need to be detectives in our own bodies, Columbo in our own lives. There is a crime scene right now in your life, and you need to look not at what everybody else sees, but look at the anomaly and ask, what does that anomaly tell us about ourselves? But this is not just an individual thing, this is a community thing. Whenever a society can't look at its unpleasant truths, its past, its history, its shadows, it comes out in symptoms, explosions of violence. It comes out in the judicial systems, in the educational systems. It comes out. And these explosions tell the truth that something is broken in the body, that something is not working. The symptom is the sight of truth. The sight that tells us that something isn't working in your life. Your job is maybe terrible, your relationship needs improvement, whatever it is, something is not working. And the symptom is what tells you that. And so we have to listen to the symptom and let it speak into us. If we do that, the theorist Lacan, he uses a term called symptom. A symptom becomes a symptom. And in French, symptom sounds like Saint Homme. Saint Homme means holy man. So he says, if you listen to the symptom is a holy man, a prophet, who will call you to transformation in your life, to change to something better. And so if you listen to your symptom can become the site of transformation. Just as in society, if we go to the symptomatic places, we listen to the outside, the people who are oppressed, the problems that are going on, and we realize that that is speaking into a problem in our society. And if we listen to it, it might lead to a healthier and better society. So, got another golf parable I want to do. I've never played golf in my life, pretty much, but I like the old golf stories. This is another example, I think, of what it means to a parable that exposes something to ourselves that we don't really know. This is a story about this preacher. He has a massive church, thousands of people, and every week he stands in front of the congregation and he has a fiery sermon, and people get roused, and he talks about the poor and the oppressed, and at the end of every sermon he says, and what are you doing for your neighbour? What are you doing for the people who live beside you, living in neighbouring towns and neighbouring cities? He says, every week I go and serve the poor. Whenever I leave this place, this sanctuary, I go out and I help the homeless. And everyone's like, whoa, very good one. But by the way, it's terrible. Helping the homeless is awful. The thing is, if homelessness is a symptom, right? Then we don't go to the homeless to bring good news to them. The homeless are good news to us. They are the sight of Christ. They are our evangelism, because they tell us the truth of a broken system that we participate in. We don't do social justice to do good. We don't do social justice to bring good news to other people, to bring salvation to them. We do social justice because we need salvation, because the outsider speaks to a problem that is within us. We go there and we find good news. The homeless help us if we listen. But it's a terrible thing because it speaks to problems that are within our structure, in our system. But if you think of it like this, that you go, well, homelessness, how many people are veterans? How many people have mental health issues? Then that shows a problem in our society, that we're putting people through torturous violence that destroys them. We're not able to deal with mental health issues and help get people the care they need. We're not able to do some things that help support people. So it tells us a problem within our social body. And it's difficult because then we realize, oh my goodness, I'm participating in something that's maybe broken. In the prison system. That's why in some respects, we've got to be careful medicating too much when someone is dealing with something difficult. The idea of say schizophrenia, for example. In psychoanalysis, schizophrenia is not the problem, it's the solution to a problem. It's the body attempting to heal itself. Something very terrible is going on, something very dark is happening. And if we medicate the body's attempt to fix it, something much more terrible might happen. And sometimes suicide rates increase. Right? It's very difficult to get to the core of the issue, but that's why, you can say alcoholism is not the problem, it's the solution to a problem. Now, it's a solution that is itself problematic, it's self-damaging, itself becomes destructive, but it's some attempt by the individual to deal with, to cope with some real difficulty and trauma that causes itself its own problems. If you only deal with the alcoholism and you don't look at what's causing it, that person will just find something else to get addicted to. Smoking, fitness, CrossFit, something crazy like that, I don't know. Because you gotta go and deal with the issue. So anyway, that's a little aside. Going we think of social justice as I'm there to help the outsider. Well, no, the outsider is there probably, if I listen to them, to help and save me. But that's not part of the story, Did I offend you guys? You're leaving. This is terrible. No, you're not leaving, you're just cold. Okay. Did I just humiliate you into staying? Because I have a prophecy for you at the end of the night. I'm leaving it, I'm saving it for you, but it's going to be a good one, right? So this preacher is preaching, bam, bam, bam. He says, I'm going to serve the homeless, I'm going to do all of this. And everyone's like, it's amazing, amazing, amazing. He does this every week for a year, right? Now, we all know God doesn't go to church, right? So God doesn't know anything about this. But the devil is a regular attender, right? The devil's a bad guy, but this is pissing off even the devil, right? The devil's like, I do some nasty stuff, but this guy's just lying to his congregation every week. This is awful, right? So he goes up to heaven, arranges an appointment. It's a lot of red tape in heaven, but he gets up there, and in front of God, he says, listen, there's this preacher lying to his congregation every week. Why is he lying? I haven't told you why yet. This is where I've been drinking too many beers. I feel like my dad telling a joke right now. Dad, I think you left out something really important, because that made total no sense whatsoever. Oh yeah, I was supposed to say the guy was a doctor. Right? Yes. Yeah. We can edit all this out in post-production. Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll just do it again. Yeah. He's lying to his congregation because he's out playing golf every week. He says, he gets in his little Mini, he drives over to the golf course, and he plays 18 holes, right? And so the devil goes up and says, he says he's serving the poor, he says he's doing all this great stuff, he's just out playing golf every week. He just wants to get away from the parishioners who all want to kind of talk to him. And so God's like, okay, I'm going to teach the guy a lesson. I'm going to teach the guy a lesson. So the next week, God shows up, listens to the guy preaching, very impressed. In fact, almost responds to the altar call. Like, whoa. Wow. Felt strangely warmed, you know? Like, wow. Yeah, but pulls back and then sees him say this thing about the poor and the homeless, and then follows him to the golf course. And he says, right, okay, I'm going to teach him a lesson here. So the guy tees up the first hole, he hits the ball, bam. And it's just a straight shot, goes through the air, lands on the green, bounces 3 times, and goes straight into the hole. Hole in one. Whoa. So, goes to the second hole, tees up, hits it. This time it slices, bounces off a tree, bounces off another tree, hits someone in the back of the head, and goes straight into the hole. Whoa. Hole in one. Third hole, fourth hole, fifth, every single one, a hole in one, right? Now the devil's looking at this, going, what is going on? He goes up to God and says, what are you doing? You said you were going to punish this guy because he's lying to his congregation, going off and secretly playing golf when nobody knows, you know. Like, but you punish him by what? Giving him the perfect game of golf? Like Tiger Woods would be weeping at this. This is like incredible. What's going on? And God, of course, says, yeah. But tell me this. Who's he going to tell? I like the fact that the laughing kind of ripples. You guys are with me? Pretty smart. This side of the room? Less so. I'll do it slower for you guys, okay? Right, yeah, that's right, better laugh now. I usually have a laugh track, actually, just to let people know when they should laugh, right? Otherwise, they're looking. Yeah. But no, so this story, I think it's a really interesting kind of reflection on kind of social media. Like, how many of us know that you can't have fun unless you show you're having fun on Instagram? You know, it's not a good cup of coffee until you've shown it to somebody. It's not a proper meal until you've had 1,000 people like it. There's this interesting phenomenon that we have where often we find it very hard to just enjoy something. What we get the enjoyment from is other people knowing. That's why there's that old story that Shizak tells of this guy who's washed up on a desert island, completely on his own. Well, at least he thinks he's on his own. And then it turns out that one other person has landed on the island from the plane wreck, and it's Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan, I mean, that shows my age. It's Meg Ryan. Don't know. But anyway, so it's just him and Meg Ryan. He's going like, oh my goodness, this is Meg Ryan. Like, I'm just Seamus from Ireland. This is Meg Ryan. He's famous. This is amazing. And like, there's only the two of us, and it looks like we're never going to get rescued. So like, Seamus is like, you know, always trying his best moves. You know, like, is your dad a thief? You know, who stole the stars, put them in your eyes? You know, is that a ladder in your tights or a stairway to heaven? You know, he's trying all his best lines, right? He's got the Irish tan, he's gone bright red, you know, and all that. He's working the little that he has. Of course, he's got no interest in him at first, but over time, he's like, we're the only two on the island, so, you know, we're going to have to pass some time. So, you know, they warm to each other, and eventually one night he makes the move, and they sleep together. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. But right after they've slept together, he says, listen, would you do me one favor? Just one favor. And she's like, what is it? She says, well, it's going to sound a little weird. Like, come on, like, what is it? He says, okay, could you draw a moustache on your face? And could you wear these clothes of mine, you know, these boots and these trousers, and kind of like put on this hat, put your hair up underneath the hat, and then meet me in 10 minutes down by the beach? She's like, this is a bit weird. No, it's not too weird. Just do it, please. Just do it for me. So she does. She puts on the moustache, puts the hair up, the hat on, wears these men's clothes, goes down, meets Seamus on the beach. Seamus goes, oh, it's great to see you. He says, you'll never guess who I just slept with. You got to tell someone, right? You can't just, the pleasure is in the telling someone. And so we get into this weird thing. We think we're enjoying, but we're always enjoying for the other, or we're doing things for the other. We're always doing stuff for some sort of reward of other people's comments or anything like that. And it's very difficult for us to just do things and enjoy life as they are. And the problem is, the more we give in to this thing where we have to tell people how happy we are, often that's because we're actually very unhappy. This is called reaction formation. If someone's always telling you something, or denial is another example where if you're an alcoholic, you say, oh, they will think I'm not an alcoholic, right? It's denial. The problem with that is if you're not an alcoholic, you say, Peter, you're an alcoholic? No. Well, that's exactly what an alcoholic would say. Well, I'm definitely not an alcoholic. That's definitely what an alcoholic would say. But denial's a little bit different. Denial is where you deny something even when someone hasn't asked. So the alcoholic says, oh, there's not enough beer, and I'm going to go down and get some more for everybody. I'm not an alcoholic or anything. Like, I never asked if you were, right? Why are you telling me you're not an alcoholic when I never asked you were? So if someone's always telling you they're happy when you never ask, you kind of go like, are you really so happy in that relationship? Because you seem to obsessively have to tell everybody that you are. Is it maybe that you're having to tell yourself that you are as well? Because you're not. Yeah? We can self-deceive in many ways. And actually parables are very, very good at bringing that to the surface, of showing all the complex and interesting ways in which we deceive ourselves. I'm going to finish with one last parable. I'm going to try this, see how it works. It's an old parable that I haven't told for a long, long time. So I'm probably going to forget parts of it. My memories, as you noticed from the other story where I missed a very important part, he was actually playing golf. But I know a lot of you have heard me speak before, so if you remember any of it, you can help me out by, shouting out the bit that I've forgotten. Okay. So this is a parable about this guy, and his name is... It's not Seamus. It's not Seamus, please. I mean, I wish it was, because that would make it a lot easier. It's not Seamus. It's somebody else. Who is it? Terry, do you remember this story? Come on, you do. Who was it? It wasn't Seamus.
It wasn't. Definitely wasn't him.
Any ideas?
No idea.
No idea? Anybody?
This is a taste, but
What's that?
yeah.
Come on, just try and think. Anybody?
Meg Ryan dressed up as.
It was Meg Ryan. That's right. No, you let me down. It was Meg Ryan. It was Meg Ryan. This is this parable of Meg Ryan. Thank you. And I said it was a guy called Meg Ryan because Meg Ryan was dressed up as a man, right? So it kind of gets complicated from the very beginning. So he's really Meg Ryan, but dressed up as a guy, dressed up as Seamus, still wearing the moustache, all of that. And so she, Meg Ryan, is she's getting on with her life. She's, she hasn't been acting for a while. She's been out of that. She was on a desert island. That's another story for another time. But she got off the desert island and she was doing some. What was she doing? Playing golf. She became a professional golfer, actually. Very weird. Nobody saw it happening, but she's very, very good. She'd get out there. She played with Jesus a lot. She was actually personally coaching Jesus. He was helping her with the miracle stuff, the walking on water. She was helping him with the strike, all of that. So Meg and Jesus like this. And, she's very happy doing this. That whole look was working for her. The whole golf thing's working for her. But then suddenly she becomes dissatisfied with her life. At first, it's just this niggling little small thing, this tiny thing. Golf isn't what it's all about. Acting wasn't what it was all about. That time with Seamus, my one true love, that didn't work out in the end. I know I'm just not satisfied, and it became bigger and bigger and bigger until she gave up golf entirely, and she tried to find something that was more meaningful. And so what she did was what did she do?
She volunteered at a homeless shelter.
She volunteered at home. No, yeah, that's it. She's not, would she do that? I don't know. You know what? You know what you're doing, by the way. You're just taking all these elements from previous stories. I mean, I like your enthusiasm, but your lack of imagination is a slight problem. I don't know if that's something that's been pointed out to you, but you know, I've got a feeling I'm going to guess the next couple of things you're going to say. You know, he's a Buddhist doing meditation with a cat, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think it was. What was it you said? A day trader. Yeah. Is that hedge funds and stuff? Yeah. Oh yeah, she did that. Oh yeah, in New York, she went to New York. She did the hedge fund stuff, day trader. Can't make very many jokes about it because I don't really understand what day traders do. I know they do it during the day. They prefer to have their nights off. I think that's pretty much all I can say about that. But she does make a lot of money, but that's not satisfying her. No matter how much money she makes, it's not scratching that itch. It's not scratching that itch. So she decides to try and find God. She tries to find the ultimate, absolute meaning. And so she dedicates herself to, what was it? Well, she dedicates herself to...
Surfing.
Surfing? Yes. Did someone say surfing, or did I just hear that? Okay, you're absolutely right. I know very little about surfing as well, but Rob Bell surfs. And so she goes surfing with Rob Bell. He's a big surfer. You know, they're surfing. And Rob swears by this, by the way. He's like, church is surfing. That's his thing. I shouldn't say that. He loves church as well, but actually he loves surfing a lot more, right? So he's out there. She's like, yeah, and surfing, you know, you feel one with the universe, one with the ocean. It's working for a bit, but she's just not finding that oneness. I mean, she tries all the ayahuasca when she's out there in LA surfing. She does all the yoga and all that. It's not working. And so what she tries to do is, what does she do next? I heard that one, but I'm always more interested in what I didn't hear, which was Kanye, hooked up with Kanye. There you go. That's another lack of imagination one there, to be honest with you. I was like, I see a certain kind of thing going on here in DeLand. It's like, you know, okay, but hooks up with Kanye and to act, because Kanye an actor? I mean, the guy can do anything. He's Jesus, kind of, or whatever. So yeah, he hooks up. She hooks up with Kanye because Kanye is a very wise individual. They hang out, does the acting, tries to give herself over then to that creative pursuit. It's just not working. Nothing's going on. So what she tries to do is she finds the wisest person she can think of, someone who is just profoundly intelligent, insightful, and incisive. And it's it is Donald Trump, I have to say. It's Donald Trump. She's like, I need to find someone who just knows what it's all about. She goes, she finds Donald Trump, they sit down together. She was like, what is the meaning of life? How can I find God? How can I find the opposite? I've tried surfing. I've tried day trading. I've hung out with Kanye West, and I've tried acting, which ironically she used to do as well. So you would have thought that she knew that wouldn't have worked. But anyway, she tried it. She goes like, I've tried to dress as a guy with the moustache. None of it's working. None of it's working. What can I do? He talks about a wall, and he talks about various things, and you know, he blames the immigrants for the problem. The reason why you can't find meaning in life is because those bloody immigrants are taking our jobs, right? That doesn't work. But then, in a rare moments of clarity, Donald Trump then turns around and says, actually, Meg, maybe God is not what you'll find at the end of your pursuit for truth, but God is the name we give to that which fuels your passion, your concern, and your drive for the truth. So perhaps the very thing you're looking for, you already have. That's all I got. Thank you.
I have to say, when we talked about the event, he did not tell me he was ending with Trump. Would have red lighted that real quick. So I want to try, and I would never put Pete on the spot, except that he sort of suggested it. We're going to do an interesting encore. How many of you connected with Pete partially or stayed connected with Pete because of his parables? You heard him speak and heard some of the parables. All right, only a few of us. So he thought about potentially doing like a shout out for some of the greatest parables maybe that we didn't hear tonight, if you've got a favorite. And he could sort of do the same thing, where we could shout out a particular parable, and then he could give it to us and then say a little bit about it. Yeah.
The landlord.
The landlord. He's as happy as anyone else.
Yes. I'm not an alcoholic or anything. Yeah. The landlord's a good one. This happens to me. Sometimes someone goes, "Oh, I love that story," and I'm going, "I haven't told that story for like 5-10 years." And the landlord's one that I haven't told probably for 5-6 years at least. So I'm gonna let me see if I can remember it. But it's a good one. Oh yeah. So what is it? Okay. It's this guy who's a minister. Oh yes, a minister. Oh yeah, got it. There you go. We'll edit that bit out as well. Yeah. So yes, this minister, she's a Methodist minister. She's sitting in her house on a Sunday afternoon, and she's just watching TV, enjoying her day. And there's a knock on the door. She opens the door, and there's this guy, and he is sweating. He's upset. He's beside himself. He's obviously run to the house. I was like, "Listen, I'm part of your church," and he says, "I've got terrible news. There's a young family, and the husband's just lost his job. The woman's too sick to work. Her sick mother lives with them. They've got 4 kids, and they can't afford to pay the rent. They've been paying the rent for the last 5 years, every month on time, every month. But things have just gone wrong in their lives, and they've raised half the money for the rent this month, but it's not enough. The landlord's going to kick them out onto the streets. It's the middle of winter. They've got nowhere to go. We've got to be able to help them. We've got to be able to do something." And so the minister says, "Yeah, absolutely, we'll help them out." He says, "By the way, how do you know them?" And he says, "Oh, he says, I'm the landlord." Yeah, and I think, and now this side are very slow. Or, what I really do want to admit is that the joke just wasn't very funny. But yes, that landlord story was the very first parable I got, or story that I got, that was about us intellectually not knowing that we're participating in a system. So we intellectually are saying, "I care, I'm so concerned, it's terrible," with the very system that we're immersed in. So we sit in Starbucks and talk about the evils of corporations while drinking the Starbucks. Right? We talk about the terrible kind of problems with the environment while making unnecessary journeys in our car. We all do this, by the way. I'm not saying, well, I am saying I'm different from you mere mortals. I actually don't do it. I grow all my own food. But we kind of, like, the weird thing is, I say I'm an animal lover. I love animals. Well, except that I eat them, right? And you know what? This is the really bad thing. I kind of know that probably the way they die, it's not euthanasia. It's not nice. It's not like, "It's time for you to go. We're going to read you some stories, and you're just going to fall asleep and wake up in a better place," right? I don't think it's like that, right? But I have a story I tell myself about myself, which is I love animals. But that covers over a more hideous truth, that I don't. That I love some animals. I love dogs, they're great, except that a dog bit me last week. 12 stitches on my face, 12 stitches. Who laughed? No. Yeah. Get them out. That's terrible. No, a friend's dog just grabbed me. Now, lovely dog, bit of a misunderstanding. But I do love dogs. But the thing is, like, there's a certain sense in which I'm telling a lie to myself. I think that's why in the UK there's more complaints about animal cruelty adverts than any other country, supposedly, because we're such animal lovers in the UK. But there's the irony. The irony is what, you're animal lovers, so you don't like seeing animal cruelty adverts? Yes, I don't want to see it. It's a story of the guy comes home to his castle and he sees his beggar at the gates. He goes in, he's furious. He says to one of his servants, "Get rid of that beggar. Put him out, kill him if necessary. You know that I'm such a kind and compassionate man. I cannot bear to look upon such suffering." Right? There's something about it, like, I'm such a kind and compassionate person. I don't want to watch those videos of animal cruelty. Like, I had somebody tell me, something they do to animals recently, and I was like, I don't want to know. Why do I not want to know? Well, partly because I don't want to know that maybe I'm participating in something that if I really looked up to it and faced up to it, I wouldn't want to participate in. And it's a difficult thing. I'm saying that as a mediator. That's only one example. I do it all the time with my clothes, with my iPhone, that I participate in the system, and I just don't want to watch that documentary that's going to tell me where this jacket was made. I don't want to know because I love kids. Kids are great, you know? So don't show me all the kids who made this and are getting nothing. I'm such a kind and compassionate man. I cannot bear to look upon such suffering. Anyway, any other stories that... One at the back?
Heaven online, would like to hear the one where Seamus goes to heaven.
Oh yeah, I love that one. I love that. That's a recent one. That's a new one. It's actually.
Heaven's the key. Okay.
What's that?
I was trying to see if it was my brother.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, don't let me interrupt your conversation. I apologize, sir. I apologize. I'm a guest in your country. You know, this is not on. We need to build a wall between Florida and Ireland. We need a wall. Yeah. Wall between you and Alabama. This is actually a story from Belfast. What I heard when I was in school, but only recently did I think, oh, actually, this is quite an interesting story to tell. But it was during the Troubles, basically. One of the techniques of the IRA was to plant an incendiary device in like a swimming pool, in a shopping centre, and then they would phone up the police, or they would phone up the shopping centre and say, there's a bomb in the building, you've got 5 minutes to get everyone out, you've got 10 minutes to get everyone out. And this happened a lot. This was like you'd be in the swimming pool. I remember once this happened to me and a friend of mine as well. And you're all brought out of the swimming pool, and then I'm sitting there in these tiny trunks, like white, and then they give you a silver thing to put around you in the middle of winter, like a silver, like a marathon runner blanket, except it's tiny. So you're just like the skinniest, most ridiculous-looking superhero in the world, with your like cape, standing in the middle of the street. Like, this is not good, right? So this would happen. So one of the stories that went around was, this guy, he dies, this guy Seamus, dies, goes to heaven, and he's waiting there at the pearly gates, and St. Peter comes out, hurries out with a big book under his arm, opens the book up, starts to look down, and then he looks up and he says, "Seamus, mate," he says, "You're not in the book. You're not getting in. You're in the IRA. Seamus looks at him and says, "Oh, I think you misunderstand me. So I'm not trying to get in. You got 5 minutes to get out." Right? If you understand that story, I think you understand the message of Christianity. That is my contention, that story captures that, and the one about the Texan. I hope someone asks me about the Texan story. That joke, the essence of Christianity, which is why is it? Because everyone's trying to get to heaven, whether the heaven of like some wholeness, satisfaction, get rid of the difficulties on the earth. But if you all should have got a free rapture tract, and that rapture tract is basically a retelling of the story I've just told, is that maybe the radical message of Christianity is not to get into heaven and get to the absolute, but say to the absolute, you get down here into the earth, the grit and grime of the world. Maybe that's the message of the incarnation, that we find God in the midst of life, in its difficulties and beauty, in its dirt, in the real engagement with real people, and not in the escape. So instead of trying to run to heaven, we should be doing what Mother Teresa said, who said, "I will not be in heaven, I will be outside guiding the way." In other words, let's get the saints out of heaven and into the earth. Thank you. Don't encourage me. Honestly, it's terrible. Lock the doors. Part 3.
I want to say the Texan, but I also don't want to not be original. So
Yeah.
do the Texan. Do the Three kick rule, and then the Texan.
Okay, three kick
That'll
rule,
be it.
then the text, and then we're done. Okay, yeah, then we're over. The three kick rule. This is a good one. This is how we solve issues in Ireland. So the story goes, this high-priced lawyer, $1,000 for 3 questions she charges, supposedly, or he charges the guy, comes over to Ireland to go duck hunting. And, he's duck hunting. I actually don't even know if we've got ducks in Ireland. I know we don't have any snakes in Ireland. St. Patrick drove them out. You know what he said while he was driving them out of Ireland? You all right in the back there, lads? It's terrible. Please don't laugh at that. That's the most cheesy joke you'll ever hear. But I'm sure we've got ducks. This is a high-priced lawyer. He imported them in. And he's there, he's shooting. He shoots a duck, falls into this field. And he's like, all right. So he walks over. He's climbing over the fence to get the duck. And this farmer is driving along. Old guy, right? And he's like, hey, mister, what are you doing there? He says, what's your name? Meg Ryan. No, Seamus. He says, Seamus. He says, well, what are you doing? He says, well, I shot that duck. That's my duck. I'm climbing over this fence and I'm going to get it. And Seamus is like, well, around here that would be trespassing because that's my field. And then the guy gets down off the fence, looks at him and says, you don't know who you're dealing with, old man. He says, I'm a high-priced lawyer. I could destroy you. He says, you want to come after me? You want to say what I can and can't do? I'm getting that duck. There's nothing you can do about it. So Seamus says, oh, is that right then? He says, oh, that right. He says, I'll tell you what, you're a high-priced lawyer. Did they ever teach you this in your high-priced universities, right? That 3-kick rule? No. He says, 3-kick rule's this way. He says, I kick you 3 times, you kick me 3 times, I kick you 3 times, you kick me 3 times. We go back and forth. The first person who gives up, the other person wins. Now, this lawyer is young, fit, he's obviously doing the track every day. He looks at Seamus, must be 7 years old. He's easy, let's do this. So Seamus gets off his tractor, does his stretches. He comes up to the guy, says, okay, you ready for this? Guy goes, yes, and Seamus kicks him right between the legs, plants him on the ground. Right? Then he kicks him on the side. The guy's breathless. But he's thinking, okay, I just need to take one more, and then it's my turn. One more. So the guy kicks him again, and he rolls over in the muck. And he gets up, he's covered in dirt from head to toe, and he's like, right, okay, now it's my turn. Seamus says, don't worry about it. He says, I give up, you win. Right? But what's interesting to me about that story, my little commentary on it is, we really want what we can't have, right? This is a psychoanalytic insight. The more you can't have something, the more you really want it. When you say to your kids, you can't play with that toy. Say, I really want that toy. I want a doggy for Christmas. I want a doggy for Christmas. You can't have a doggy for Christmas. I want a doggy for Christmas. You can't have a doggy for Christmas. I think you misunderstand. I think I'm going to make your lives a living hell for the next 20 years if you don't get me the puppy. I'm willing to say no more about it if you just get the puppy, but otherwise this is war. I will hold my breath until I pass out. I will do whatever it takes. And if you get me the puppy, you never have to buy me anything ever again. That is me satisfied. And the more you say no, the more the puppy takes on this magical reality. Until you take away the prohibition and buy the puppy, right? You buy the puppy, 3 weeks later no one's feeding it, a month later you're drowning it in the bath, right? I had a very traumatic childhood. What's interesting about the story is he really wants the duck when there's the prohibition, but as soon as you take away the prohibition, it's like, it's ridiculous. He's getting kicked around for just a duck. So we have things that we really, really want. I really want to be famous. I really want to be rich. I really want this. I really want that. And we think the more we can have, the more amazing it will be. You take away the prohibition and you get it, and you realize how terrible it is. This is why I love the New Age thing. I love it. I love the fulfill your dreams. Brilliant. Fulfill your dreams so that you can experience the abject horror of them. So that you can experience how terrifyingly impotent they are to remove the anxiety of your existence. Fulfill your dreams so that you can despair. Right? Finally, the final one was the Texan, which is one of my personal favorites. And actually, I'll tell you this, I won't give a commentary to this one, but I will say this, and I mean it. if you understand this joke, you do get the heart of Christianity. It's all in this joke. It's all in this story. You can pay me money afterwards, and I'll tell you the reason. You know, so that's how I make my money. That's how I'm going to get the private jet, right? But, simple story. This guy, this Texan, made a lot of money on oil, right? His great-great-great-great-grandfather left Ireland many, many centuries ago, came to America, and just made it rich. But of course, he wants to reconnect with his roots. And so he flies back to Ireland one year, and he finds out that he has ancestry there. He has relatives there. And he does some research in City Hall. He finds out that in Galway, there's a little farmhouse, and there's a guy there who is still connected blood-wise. So the Texan goes to Galway, goes up to the house, knocks on the door, and this old farmer guy gets out. You know, he looks a bit dusty, like he's been in a bit of a fight, you know. And the Texan says, "I've come all the way from America. You know, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather comes from this land, and I wanted to reconnect with my roots, and we have shared family, shared blood." And he goes, "Oh, that's wonderful. Come on in. Come on, I'll make you a cup of tea." So they sit down, they get to know each other. "Oh, what's your name?" "Oh, yeah, what's your name?" You can guess. And they had a cup of tea, and then he says, "Listen, Seamus," he says, "show me around your place. I want to see where you live." So Seamus brings him out the back and says, "You see all of this? All of this is mine, right? See that tractor there to the house? That's all mine. Oh, and you see that old tree there to the house? That's mine. And that old broken fence, it's all mine." And the Texan laughs. He laughs. And he says, back home, he says, "I can get in my car. I can drive all day east. I wouldn't get to the end of my property. I could drive all day west. I wouldn't be able to touch the border of my land. I could drive all day north. I wouldn't get to the end. Or all day south. I still wouldn't be able to touch the boundary." Seamus is like, he says, "Yeah, I know how you feel," he says. "I used to have a car like that as well." Yeah. Okay, there you go. Thank you very much. Cheers, thank you. Thanks.
So the plan is, if you want to have some interaction with Pete, we are going to head down to Persimmon Hollow Brewing Company. For those of you that are not from DeLand, the street right out here is called Georgia. If you cross Woodland Boulevard, it's right there on the right. They will have these 3 beers and probably 10 others. So feel free to come out and enjoy. Pete will be accessible. He's inspired.
Yes. One thing I forgot to say is, if you have a good parable you want to tell me it, because I'm always looking for more. So if there's a good story, either tell me over there or tell me at the pub.
Excellent. So I'm trying to think if we had any other details. Yeah, if you want to come out tomorrow night, our regular service is 5 o'clock. I'll be interviewing Pete. There are many of you that I do not know I'd love to get to meet, so we'll be down at the bar. Come chat with Pete, come out tomorrow night, and then he's got a public lecture on Monday at Stetson at 2 p.m. It's sort of below the library. It's 25L, but if you want to come out, check that out. Thank you all for being here. Another hand for Pete. Oh, right, the books. Yeah, he needs to sell books. So if you want books or any of that stuff back there, we'll meet up at the brewery in a few minutes.